So Landy has a contract to deliver 2,750 wooden toy storage boxes without lids. The dimensions of a sheet of plywood and a box are shown below. So basically we are given two sort of boxes, and you can see that the first one is regards to the dimensions of the plywood used to make the boxes, and the second one is the dimensions of the box put together. Annexure B shows the different parts that the wooden box are made of on one sheet of plywood. So we need to consider Annexure B as well. So what you see in front of you is the Annexure B, and it shows exactly how the wood is cut. One single sheet of plywood is cut to make the various boxes, and then all these pieces are put together to make the boxes. So now that we have an idea of what we're working with, and remember right at the top it says 2,700 wooden boxes, and we must not forget the information that we've read. So it says here, determine how many complete boxes can be cut from one sheet of plywood. Now obviously we need to look at annexure B, the one where I just presented to you in the previous slide, and you can see it on your right hand side. And by looking at this, we can determine how many boxes are made from this one sheet of plywood. So this answer requires a little bit of common sense, as you can see by looking at the box on the information where it shows the dimensions of the box. You can see by looking at it drawn there that there is two short small sides and two long sides, and obviously there must be a single base right at the bottom because it doesn't have a lid. So looking at this annexure B on the right hand side, and I've indicated to you that on the red square you can see that there are four bottoms indicated on the sheet, because the rest in regards to the two sides for each box. So looking at this, we can see that they will make only four boxes, storage boxes from this sheet of plywood. So it's a little bit of common sense and a little bit of general knowledge applied. Verify showing all calculations whether 687 sheets of plywood will be enough to make 2,750 boxes. So using what we have just worked with, we know that each sheet gives us four boxes. So if they are saying in the statement here that 687 sheets are provided to us, all we need to do is multiply that by 4 and to see whether we arrive at 2,750 boxes. And that would be the most simplest thing to do if you know that one sheet makes four boxes. So let's multiply that sheet by 687 and to see whether we get 2,750 boxes. So there are three options presented here in which learners could use, but I've chosen the second option. If you look at the number of boxes, would be 687 times 4, and that as in regards to what I've just explained to you, and we got 2,748, and therefore we have not arrived at the amount that they spoke of, which is 2,750. So therefore it is not enough. Annexure C shows the projected income and total cost for only 2,000 boxes. A, calculate the income amount per box. Now we need to know this because if you notice, the top of the income line rests between the 800 and 900,000. So we need to know what that value is. So by looking at these line divisions between 800,000 and 900,000, we can see that there are four lines there. And by applying a bit of common sense and realizing how to divide this, we can settle on that each of those lines divisions are 20,000 each. So 800,000, the next line will be 820,000, the next line will be 840,000, and so on. So if we had to read the top of the income line, we'll see it sits on the third line. I've indicated there with the red line to show you how we're going to read it, and we'll notice that we arrive at 860,000. So that's the value we'll be using and working with. Now 860,000 is what we will be working with, but the question mentioned that there were 2,000 boxes. So all we need to do is take the 860,000 and divide by the 2,000 boxes, and we'll know the value of each, the income of each box, and which would be arrived at 430. Should the question not indicate that it's 2,000 boxes or the amount of boxes, then what we would do is, the other option we would do is, right where we read the 860,000, right at the top of the income box, we'll move all the way down right to the horizontal line where it says number of boxes, and you'll find that there is 2,000 boxes there. So you'll be familiar with this in terms of reading of graphs and coordinates. It applies the same way. So you have your X and Y. Your Y line will be the rands, and the X line will be the number of boxes. So you find that the 2000 is right at the bottom there, so you could use it from there. So now we move to B. B asks us to estimate the number of boxes required to break even. So what is break even? Break even is when the income and the expenses are equal. Now if you look at the graph, you will notice that there is a part on these two lines where they meet. Now that part there where they meet is known as the break even. So the question requires that we speak about the number of boxes. So what we need to do is, our focus will be the X line, the line that says number of boxes. But when we're dealing with break even, I told you we focus on the area where the lines have crossed. Now this means that the income is equal to the expense or the cost. So if you notice by the red line, I've drawn a line from the point where they meet, or the point of intersection, and it comes all the way down to our number of boxes line. Now in determining this, now notice the questions use the term estimate. So there's no exact value indicated where this red line meets. So what we will do is, we will look at the 1000 and we will look at the 1500. Now we need to see those lines in between to determine what exactly each of those lines amount to. For instance, like we did with the 800,000 and the 900,000. So looking at this, we see there are 4 lines in between 1000 and 1500. So applying, as we said, a bit of common knowledge and applying a trial and error, we can see that it would be 1100, 1200, 1300 and 1400 before we get to 1500. So each of those lines will be 100. Taking this into consideration, what we will do is, we will go to the closest line of those hundreds we spoke about. That's right by the red line. So we look at, it's right by 1300. Now looking at this, we see that line lies right next to, almost touching 1300. Now estimating this, we can see it's not halfway, it's leaning more towards the 1300. So we use an estimated amount of 1280 boxes. Moving on to C, we get Landy projected the total profit from all the boxes to be 367,500. Verify if a projection is valid. Now remember that we are dealing with 3 variables in terms of 3 different components in terms of finding out the total profit. And also remember that you need to validate the statement, so you need to say whether you agree or disagree. And our 3 components that we speak of is the income, and then in terms of the costing, we have fixed cost and variable cost. So we need to take those things into consideration when calculating the profit. So we see that our cost graph starts at a 320,000 figure, and this means that we know that the 320,000 is our fixed. That's why our cost graph starts from there. This means that it's an amount that must be paid. Thereafter, above the 320 is the variable cost. So this is why I've drawn the red line to indicate to you that that portion there above is the variable cost. So we need to work out the variable cost, because we know what the fixed cost is already. So working and focusing on the variable cost per box. So what we do is we subtract the difference between the highest amount and the lowest amount. Now if you look at the top of the cost graph, you'll see that it is 680,000, right? 680,000, and we go all the way down to the starting of that line, which is 320,000. Subtracting that means this is the amount we will be working with. That is why we subtract that two numbers, and then we will divide it by the amount of boxes we have all together, which is 2,000 boxes. And I've showed you how we arrive at that 2,000 boxes, because remember, we've taken the values between, or that adds up from the starting of that line to the ending of the line, and that line speaks about 2,000 boxes. So we divide it by 2,000, right, and we get 180 Rand per box is our variable cost. So why did we work out 180 Rand per box? The reason we've done this is, in terms of the graph, they've showed us the values for 2,000 boxes. But remember, Landy hired someone to make 2,750 boxes. So this is the amount we are working with. So we need to know the value of each of these boxes, or should I say the variable cost of each of these boxes, to apply to the 2,750 instead of the 2,000 as indicated on the graph. So we need to work with Landy's amounts. So Landy is using 2,750 boxes and estimating those boxes to come up to a value which he says will be a profit. So taking this into account, we know the fix will always be 320,000. So therefore you find we are adding now the cost for the 2,750 boxes, right? So we know the fix is 320,000. Now all we need to do is take the variable cost per box and multiply it by 2,750. Now in so doing, we add up all these amounts, right, and we arrive at 815,000 rands. So what we've done now is basically worked out the costing, the total costing for these boxes. Now remember, in working out profit, you need to say income minus cost or expense, and you'll get your profit or your loss. So now we need to work all the way to our income. Now if you notice, or if you remember, in the beginning we worked out the costing or the income cost per box in the previous questions, and that was 430. So we're using this amount that we've already worked out previously, and we're applying it now to the 2,750 boxes, because remember, we worked it out. We took the income amount, the income graph, which we spoke of is 860,000, and we divided it by 2,000 boxes, and that's how we got the 430 in the earlier question. So now we're multiplying this by 2,750, because this is the amount of boxes that Landy speaks of. So when we multiply this, we get a new income that we will receive from the 2,750 boxes, which is 1,182,500 Rand. Now that we know our income for the 2,750 boxes as well as the cost for it, all we need to do is subtract the income minus the cost, and we will get our profit that she would make. Now in so doing, we see the last step where it says profit, and we've subtracted the income minus the cost, and we get 367,500 Rand. Now that's the amount that Landy projected, so we make sure we write a statement to validate whether she is correct or not, and in this case her projection is valid, or you may say she is right or wrong, but in this case projection is totally valid.